This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Starting the show is K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien with this week's grain market update. He says the markets are still experiencing volatility as they prepare for the upcoming USDA reports. K-State Extension Beef Specialist Dale Blasi keeps the show going by giving a rundown of the 24th K-State Beef Stalker Field Day that is taking place September 28th. Chip Redmond, K-State meteorologist, rounds out the show with a weather update. He says there's a chance for moisture and cooler temperatures in the upcoming week. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned into Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show, how we always do, with a grain market update. And as always, we're joined with K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. Dan, thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you, Shelby.
So talking about the grain market, starting off our conversation, first with futures.
The futures markets for grain seem to be in kind of a holding pattern until we find out what the USDA's updated crop production, supply, demand, and price projection information will be on Tuesday. And frankly, that's been a source of consternation for a good amount of farmers, and that they haven't seen the volatility that they perceive is probably justified given what they have in a number of parts of the country for crops in the field. And to that degree, the September contract for corn closed at 470 3/4, but now that contract is about a week away from going off the board. It's in its delivery period. So we're really focusing on the December corn contract, which is trading at about 486 1/4. I guess, Shelby, I would say that, gracious, the type of changes and potential variance in where yield forecasts could come out on Tuesday's report just have a lot of potential to actually change that around to cause a lot of market volatility. It seems that contract traded yesterday at 486 1/4 for a close, has gotten down to about 470, but has gone pretty much sideways since then. So be a lot of eyes on where the D's corn futures contract will go, and it'll hinge off of that USDA NASS report, most likely, and NASS report and the WASDE report. And for soybeans closed for November at 1359.5. We've had pretty good buying the last week. China's entered the market in a proactive way. It was a buyer for several days in a row. That has been certainly welcome for the U.S. Soybean producers. And as far as the price trend, we've generally moved it. We were at about 1410, 1405, something like that, about a week and a half ago, and now have moved down to 1359.5. Had been as low within the last month as about 1280 or so. So just the definition of volatility, we're kind of looking at 10-15 cent movement on corn, but we're trading in about a dollar or so price range in the last 2 weeks, dollar or more. So just a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty on the soybean side. And again, setting up for that report, I know we'll talk about that more later. Just a lot of trepidation as to where soybean yields and soybean production this year will come out. And frankly, the soybean supply-demand balance sheet just is more vulnerable than the corn one. And we'll talk about that later. For wheat, we've seen wheat futures decent, 737, down about 12 cents yesterday. And it's really telling that until over the last 3 marketing years, we've gotten up to this 763 is the season average price in the 21-22 marketing year, jumped up to 883, are now projected to be about 750. And here we have futures trading at about 737 for the D's contract. And the futures based and crop insurance number for next year based off the July contract is hanging around 740. So I think we have in mind, particularly as our reference point, where we had jumped to during the height of the Russia-Ukraine war worries. That was last year. We've come down off of that. These are still, historically speaking, very good wheat futures prices, but what kind of sours that for a lot of Kansas producers is that we've had such inflation in our production costs that 740 selling price isn't what it used to be in so many words. And I would add in terms of cash markets, same issues, Shelby, you and I have been talking about for a good long time, and looking at new crop bids for corn versus grain sorghum. Corn bids running in most places except for Garden City, that you're looking at about 467 to 472. There are one or two bids in the Garden City area, and the cattle feeding area about 30 cents higher, one at 506. So that's telling also. I have also heard, while we're waiting for harvest to occur, that what tend to see each year some people running short before that harvest comes, and some really, really strong bids. But those are quick takers, quick offer, quick take. Somebody just needs grain right now to bridge the gap. Grain sorghum bids, again, by the time you look out to December, you got corn harvest bid for in Salina at 467 in October, 491 for grain sorghum. In Hutchinson, 486 for October for corn, 536 the top bid for grain sorghum. So there's clearly some desire to get hold of, gain control of new crop grain sorghum, and people are probably looking to fill contracts and to be aggressive going into that next market year. Wheat prices for next harvest, top numbers are about 703, and that'd be in Topeka, but most other numbers 668, 688, etc. And again, that you've got the crop insurance price about 740. You see these prices, and they're honestly about $1.50 to almost $2 lower than what farmers had just seen. So it's our reference price, or what we think of psychologically as being pretty happy with, is what we had about within the last 12 months. So these are a little bit disappointing, and compared to where we have been, they're still, for the most part, by our KSU budgets, covering direct costs of production. The land situation, machinery situation depends on whether you own it or you're renting it or paying for it or whatever. But so we have moderately profitable wheat prices, and really, I think the bigger thing with wheat right now in terms of how much we plant this coming year will be probably crop rotations and moisture on the one hand, and then farmers taking a good hard look at whether they feel the prices that they're seeing out in front of them in 2024 are profitable or not.
Dan, you mentioned a USDA report that's coming out next week, and have the markets kind of prepared a little bit for that report coming out and what's going to be included in it?
In general, we've had a number of reports come out that have from private analysts that have indicated, gosh, it looks like that the USDA's number in the August report of 175.1 is probably about 1.5 to 1.6 bushels too high. In fact, that's the average guess for corn production for the 2023. By the time it's finalized, is again 173.5, and that would take production from 15.1 billion bushels down to 15 even, with the ending stocks figure of about 2.14. It's sort of been an observation that with the strong record high corn planted acres this year, that we'd have to have really about 171, 172 or less of U.S. corn yield and 14.8 billion bushels, something like that, to really, really get ourselves worried about corn. And I think with that general thought in mind, that the corn futures have, in essence, just kind of been positioning themselves to not be vulnerable in terms of whether they're on a buy-sell mode, and just they're apparently waiting and seeing and assuming that the worry that farmers have out in the field on this probably, in so many words, they must be thinking it's not justified because we have 486 D's corn. That's why. So if that number comes in on the low side, that could cause prices to move higher. We'll be watching. On the soybean side, again, the projection that the USDA had in the August report, 50.9 bushels per acre, 4.2 billion bushels, and for 2023 production, general kind of a conservative reduction down to 50.2 bushels per acre, 4.15 billion bushels production. To me, there's just more risk about that number. We've had awfully dry conditions, and the numbers that the USDA will be representing were those that they saw on September 1st, and 1 or 2 days either side of that. It's pretty hot and dry in some of those areas. The lowest estimate was just under 50 bushels per acre. If these numbers come in and they're, say, 49.5, something like that, bushels per acre, and you get down below 4.1 billion, then that's probably the spark for quite a bit of volatility. And really would bring us to the point of having to start to think about rationing soybean usage. Even at these kind of average projections, you're looking at about 200 million bushels of carryout is what the average trade expectations are for that USDA WASDE balance sheet. So any production sharply lower than 50 bushels per acre, lower than 4.1 billion bushels, takes us down to 100 million something. Starts with a 1. I'm not just trying to bang the drum with hyperbole as to what could happen, but there really is a lot of risk and uncertainty coming into this report, especially with the dry conditions that have hit the last couple, 2-3 weeks. So we shall see where it comes about, but it is probably is judicious to think about the potential actions given what would happen on either same yields we have or something sharply lower, because that may necessitate Kansas farmers and agribusiness people taking different steps to limit their price risk.
Dan, mentioning dry conditions, are the concerns that producers are having around those conditions valid concerns right now?
I think so. Well, for instance, in Kansas, we have about 54% of our corn acreage under some type of drought. But when you go to Iowa, there's 92% of the corn acreage in some type of drought. Wisconsin, 85. Illinois, not so much. They're only about 26, but Nebraska, 74. 68% in Texas. Of course, that's not as big of a situation. Overall in the U.S., 49%. So a number of states are at a fair amount of risk. And on the soybean side, and you look at which states are most vulnerable, again, some awfully important ones. Again, Iowa, 91% of the soybean crop under some type of drought. Nebraska, 82. Wisconsin, 83. Indiana and Illinois aren't as much. And maybe that's part of what's going on. You know, the traders, they may be more centric on what they see out their window or in the vicinity. And crops in Illinois, Indiana don't look too bad, but we start heading to the west and to the north and parts of the south, and you start to see these risks. And I guess that's why we have the USDA going out into all these states and getting objective in the field measures here around September 1 to give us some hard numbers to work with.
That was K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be back with more ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Friday show now discussing an upcoming field day. And this upcoming field day is the 24th K-State Stalker Field Day. And then to talk about it, we have K-State Extension Beef Specialist Dale Blasi. Dale, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Shelby.
This K-State Beef Stalker Field Day is coming up soon. So, Dale, to start off our conversation, could you give us a rundown of what this day is going to hold for participants?
In short, what we're going to do is conduct the 24th annual field day, which is designed to deliver information, updated information, market information, and some various topics that are of interest to those folks that are stocker cattle producers or those that background calves.
A full day starting in the morning and going all the way till kind of supper time. And so getting started at 9:30 with registration?
Yes, registration at 9:30. And Dr. Glenn Tonser kicks the program off about 10:30 in the morning. And then we conduct a producer panel. And this year, I think this would be of a particular interest to everybody, for that matter, that being labor, recruiting, and retention. And I've assembled a excellent panel of producers and folks involved in our ag-allied industries to address the issues of labor.
At this field day, will there also be time for participants to ask questions they have for themselves?
Of course, and that's a really big part of this panel, is that with Wes Ishmael serving as our panel moderator, he probes questions himself, but then we also rely very heavily on questions specifically from the audience.
Part of the day that's hopefully going to be very tasty, you will be serving attendees lunch.
Yes, barbecue brisket lunch by our Cox brothers here in Manhattan. They'll be assembling that meal as well.
And on the schedule, it says viewing posters. And so what posters will participants be able to view?
Well, our graduate students that conduct work at the Stalker unit, we always put together posters of the recent research. So that gives the producers over the lunch and during breaks to review some of the more updated work that has come out of the Stalker unit itself. And
after lunch, being joined to talk about pharmaceutical technologies, what are you hoping participants get there?
Well, our sponsor this year is Merck Animal Health, and two of their technical veterinarians are going to be on board to discuss implants and deworming products that are available, just to help keep folks up to date with what is going on out in the industry.
Something else also important to the industry, grazing cattle.
Exactly. And a fairly new hire in our department, Dr. Logan Thompson. He's doing a lot of work in the sustainability space, very aggressively working with folks throughout the country. And his contribution, his remarks regarding the impact of grazing cattle from a sustainability perspective is something I thought our attendees would find of value to be aware of and to stay on top of as well.
And then if people need their quick afternoon nap at 3 o'clock, there's a quick break, and then you resume at 3:30.
That's right. A colleague of mine, formerly from the University of Minnesota, but now working in Nebraska, Dr. Alfredo Di Costanzo from UNL, University of Nebraska, has done some pretty cool work looking at bunk calling in the grow yard. And I'm looking forward to hearing Alfredo's comments and remarks for our producers.
And then going even farther from Nebraska, South Dakota State University, having an expert from that area.
Yes, Dr. Zach Smith, feedlot professor, and I've seen him speak a few times and was sufficiently impressed with the young man to bring him down to be a part of our program. He's going to talk about the appropriate use of implants during the backgrounding and stalker phase. Certainly the recent regulations that have come out from the FDA regarding the use of growth implants, he will have comments on that to help guide producers on implant choice.
And so how does this day wrap up, Dale?
Well, every year for the last 20 years or so, we've basically have had a nut fry, kind of send off the attendees with prairie oysters and coal hull ice cream. And so we try to get it wrapped up. Folks have an opportunity to catch up with one another. I've always felt that it's important for producers to visit amongst themselves, to build some time in for that. And this is the perfect venue for that, for producers to catch up with one another, find out what they're doing, what their plans are down the road. I think it's a value for everybody, for that matter. You know, the opportunity to exchange ideas and catch up on the latest happenings is very important.
Would you say there's kind of almost a theme to this year's program?
Not actually. There isn't. It's. I try to formulate the program to meet the needs for the industry. After doing it for 24 years, the first 5 years you would run out of a theme fairly quickly. So I try to blend it, keep it fresh and crisp. I think Dr. Tonzer's presentation on the outlook will kind of set the stage on things that we ought to be thinking about for the next 12 years. Certainly as we're starting to gather our calves and think about refilling our pastures this upcoming 2024 grazing season. So there's a lot of things that are on the table, a lot of dynamics in motion that many of us aren't aware of. We know it's just escalating costs, and buying back into this calf market is something that one needs to take pause of. But looking forward to the interaction, and I think this will be as good as the others that we have conducted.
And what would you say to those people who are still on the edge about thinking about coming to the Beef Stalker Field Day?
Well, we're always open at the Stalker unit, and we invite visitors to the unit. Just get in touch with me regardless. We have had numerous one-on-one meetings with producers that have had specific questions, and that's part of the service mode of this university resource is to help producers. And certainly the field day is one place where you can catch up with your peers, but certainly don't ever hesitate not to reach out to us should you ever have any questions or want to see how we're conducting our limit feeding research, for example, or what have you.
Dale, you've helped put on this Beef Stalker Field Day for many years now, and so as another year comes around, what makes you excited for this year?
It's just another notch in the belt, if you will. It's the 24th annual. Of course, we're not looking too far. It's like a football game. We're not looking on to 25, but certainly that'll be a milestone. I'm excited about it because it allows producers from throughout Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, even Oklahoma, sometimes Arkansas, to come up and see the resource that we have at K-State. And we always go out of our way. The folks that work out there, we always put fresh lipstick on the Stalker unit. It is a facility that we're very proud of. And it's an opportunity to showcase what we've done differently, what improvements have been made, and what our thoughts and focus are for the coming years.
For people who are thinking about attending the 24th K-State Beef Stalker Field Day on September 28th, how can they go about registering for this event?
Well, they certainly can stop by their local county or district extension office and pick up a form, but certainly go to ksubeef.org. There's the form there online where a producer can register. ksubeef.org is the location for the specifics, the directions to the event and everything.
And for directions, where is this taking place? What's that address for the Stalker unit?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about this facility. From campus, it's only 5 miles north and east. To the top of the hill, past the Farm Bureau building, you head west on Marlette Avenue, and you just keep driving till you come to the overhead on the north side of the road, and you just drive on in. It's fairly easy to find, and the information to get there certainly is at the ksubeef.org website.
If people are planning on coming and are registering, how much is registration, and is there an early bird with that?
Well, the early bird is we really there's a $10 difference, $25 if you pre-register. On-site is $35. The deadline for registration is September 14th, 2023. We need to do that simply to get a meal count, get a head count ready for us to be prepared for those folks. And, of course, we always get people that just walk in, and they're always welcome, and we understand that should there be rain or harvest or whatever conditions that the folks are dealing with, they may or may not be able to make it. But at any rate, the deadline we would like is September 14th.
Dale, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us some information about this upcoming field day.
Thank you very much, Shelby.
That was Kansas State University Extension Beef Specialist Dale Blasi discussing the upcoming 24th K-State Beef Stalker Field Day that's taking place September 28th at the Beef Stalker Unit in Manhattan, Kansas. The day is going to get started at 9:30 a.m. with registration and coffee and will wrap up around 5:30. The program will include the latest practical information of changes that are happening in the beef industry. Registration for this event is requested, and the cost for it on or before September 14th is $25. After that, it is $35. Walk-ins are welcome to this field day, but they do ask if you know you're coming, please register before September 14th. You can find out more information about this event and register for it by going to ksubeef.org. Again, that is ksubeef.org. I will link that in today's show notes so you can find out more information about this Beef Stalker Field Day and register for the event. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Kansas State University meteorologist Chip Redmond with this week's weather update. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we end our Friday show, as we normally do, with a weather update from K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip is starting off our conversation with looking back and seeing that we've had some pretty warm temperatures.
Yeah, it's been warm. There's just no getting around it. We haven't seen a lot of records fall, but 100 degrees has been pretty darn common, especially in the west and central part of the state. The difference between this event and the one we saw in mid-August was we had a lot less moisture. And so at least at night, we're getting some reprieve with temperatures dipping into the 60s. And that's been really, really good for folks and cattle and everything to just recover a little bit. And then it's also kept that heat index down in the afternoon. So it's been a little bit more tolerable than what we saw in mid-August. Now, we did have a cold front come through across the state earlier this week that brought some welcome relief. It did bring some cooler than normal temperatures measured in the low 50s in many places. And it also brought that smoke in as well, where cold, stable air kept the smoke at the surface, and it got really, really smoky on Wednesday. And so definitely a change in the weather pattern, but we're still warmer than normal as we go into this weekend.
And you mentioned we haven't really had any moisture, so has that created an expansion in the drought monitor?
Yeah, with this recent round of heat, and honestly, even tying into the last round of heat, a lot of folks haven't gotten moisture. And so we're up to a month in many places where they haven't measured a quarter inch of rain in a day. And that is not a good story for the drought monitor. If you look, especially combined with the dry, warm conditions we've observed, is the combination for drought degradation, and we've seen that with most of the Northeast and then parts of South Central and even Southwest had drought degradation with an expansion in severe drought, especially for the Northeast, including the Manhattan area. And, as we look at the drought monitor, we had a lot of improvement over the last month or two, but now we have expanded to 84% of the state in a drought category and up over 20% of the state in extreme or worse drought conditions.
We move into this upcoming week. Can people be expecting to continue to see those warmer temperatures with dry weather?
So, we'll keep the warmer and drier temperatures and precipitation free for most of the weekend. We do have that change, though, that ridge of high pressure that's been impacting us over the last week. It's starting to shift west. That's going to allow some moisture to creep cyclonically around that, and it's going to bring a lot of moisture. It looks like there'll be several rounds of thunderstorms that are going to impact mostly western and central parts of Kansas with as much as 1 inch to 2 inches of rain possible. It'll be thunderstorms, so they'll vary greatly by location. But the folks that have gotten lucky with precipitation this summer are going to probably see another round whereas eastern Kansas, drier. I mean, we'll still see some moisture chances, and we'll take anything we can get, but only up to a half inch of rain is expected, and that's enough for about 5-6 days of average precipitation. So we need a lot more rain than that, but we'll take this break early next week.
Chip, you mentioned some storms, and should people be expecting some severe weather or really just some heavy rainfall?
As much moisture is in place, I don't expect widespread severe. We're just not in that time of the year where we have enough wind shear to support severe weather. But I'm not saying there won't be an isolated hail or wind report by any means, but that's much needed moisture, hopefully.
With that moisture, is it going to pull in some cooler temps for people?
Yeah, we'll have, obviously with thunderstorm activity, increased cloud cover. That's going to help our temperature gain quite a bit. We'll have below normal temperatures for at least Monday and likely Tuesday until that system pulls out and we start to warm and potentially dry back out again, unfortunately.
Chip, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us our weather update.
Yep, thanks for having me.
That was Kansas State University meteorologist Chip Redmond with this week's weather update. You can keep up to date with the weather by going to the Kansas Mesonet. The web address for the Mesonet is mesonet.ksu.edu. That is spelled mesonet.ksu.edu. I will also link it in today's show notes, which as always you're able to find on agtoday.net. That's all we have for you this week on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.